Good evening, everybody. Well, we are excited to have you in here this evening, Wednesday, March the 30th. We are live on Discord, Facebook, and Clapper. Tonight we have an exciting interview with Zach, ManifestKingApogee. He's going to be joining us in just a couple seconds up here. We've got just a couple news items that we'll go through really quick. DOI giveaways, we'll talk about that as we're wrapping up. We have some little bit of group promotion, shilling, hyping, however you want to say it. We're going to be discussing some of that too. So Corey, let's jump right into it and get Zach up here.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go ahead and invite him to speak.
Bring him on up.
Look at that technology working. How you doing, Zach?
Good evening.
Yeah, doing good. Taking an interesting spin on things here. Figure we go ahead and invite you up and we can talk about the news and you can hang out, maybe kind of peek over a shoulder while we talk about a topic or two and bring you in.
Yeah, sounds great.
All right.
Well, thank you again for the opportunity and the time to listen to me ramble. And I think Phil on Clapper the other day said that, Corey, if we talk too much, we'll probably pull everybody through a black hole. So,
hey, I'd like to see if it's possible. Let's talk
be
about
careful because at least on screen I'm right between you, so be careful. I'll just disappear. So yeah, we're excited to have you up, Zach. We're really looking forward to hearing about the project. We're going to be posting this up in podcast chat. We're going to lay this all out in front of you. So if you guys will join us in there, if you are on Facebook or Clapper, and you would like to come over and interact with us, then come on over to the Discord and jump in the podcast chat. And here we would love to have you and engage.
Where would you like to start on the news here? I know we're wanting to make it quick and fast before we jump into this, not take as much time as usual.
Well, you know what? We, through last night's interaction with everybody, we decided that we were going to do a little bit more educational stuff, right? So as I was looking through the news, I was kind of keeping that in mind. And there's a news stories in there, 13 apps removed after there was Trojan horses found in them, right? Just viruses, and these were specifically targeting crypto wallets. And so I thought we could talk about that for 1 second and then derive the lesson from it.
I thought that was a great idea as well too. So would you like me to jump in? I'm just going to
jump in
the article here. Yeah. So what we have here, by the way, thank you, Mount Jags. Awesome. Great news.
News
We've actually
contributor.
we've been having a lot of really good news in there. It's getting glorious. It's getting to the point in time here where I don't even need to look for it anymore. You all are fantastic. To that point, though, this is something that's truly relevant, and I think we talk about it sometimes as a community, as a worldwide community, and also as the DOI community, but I think we need to recognize that as beautiful as it is to be on the ground floor of a new industry, of a new way of interacting societally, that also presents a lot of opportunities for those who don't have any moral fortitude or ethics and will derive income however they can to take advantage of us. And to that point, the article here, 13 apps removed after researchers uncover Trojan crypto wallet scheme. So apparently this scheme, which is, it's been in operation. No, and it's been in operation since May of 2021. So it says here that it targeted Chinese users through social media groups and fake websites. And clearly, that is just the tip of the iceberg, of what we've seen. But in that particular case, one of these was actually on the Google Play Store, and it's called Jack's Liberty Wallet. Hopefully none of you have Jack's Liberty Wallet. And it was actually removed after it had been downloaded 1,100 times. So,
oh, man.
Ouch.
That's a shame.
Yeah, that is a shame, because think about it. 1,100 times doesn't sound like a lot for an app to be downloaded, and in the grand scheme compared to millions of downloads, it's not. But for the people who downloaded that app, which clearly is a wallet app, they would go in there and I'm sure that there was some probably super strong APY, returns that they were getting, or they were able to quote unquote stake their Ether or whatever it might be and make returns on it that built up in a wallet. In theory, they saw the numbers building up over time. But at the end of the day, whenever they went to take the money out, they're not able to do so. So that's at 1,100 times. Even if it was only $2,000 per, that's still 2.2 million US dollars. And I'm guessing it's probably a lot more than that because some people, I'm sure, put quite a bit of funds in there over time.
Yeah, that's rough.
So that's rough. And that's just one of them.
So lesson learned. What do we derive
learned.
from this?
So part one, be very, very careful whenever it comes to new applications. It doesn't mean that you can't adopt new things. In fact, the entire industry is all about adopting new technologies, being on the cutting edge of something brilliant that hasn't been done before. And what is it, that Crypto.com commercial, fate favors the bold or something like that? What did Matt Damon tell us? Yeah, so something to that effect. But there is something to be said about being on the cutting edge, but just take very, very calculated risks. And if you're on a new exchange or involved in a new project, just be thoughtful about how much you know about that project, how involved you are, how confident you are, how many other people you know that are engaged in it, and whether or not there's any evidence that it isn't a rug pull or a scam or some kind of phishing or Trojan horse.
Yeah, and getting these from trusted sources, right? And doing some research into it. And, there's some things that we're just learning that are technologies that are just happening, right? Where they can literally, we were just being told earlier, they can literally just duplicate an entire website in just seconds, right? They just run it through. They have a program does it, bam, under a little bit different URL. But if you're not really careful, it looks so much the same that it could really get the best of us. You know what I mean? So you have to be really careful.
Well, it could, because to that point, talking about an exchange, for instance, you can actually, it's just code, right? So if you wanted to, you could take Bitcoin's code, or you could take Binance's code. And if you had the desire and the wherewithal, you could just take it, copy, paste it, build out your own exchange. In fact, you can even go on Fiverr now and build out a simple exchange. It doesn't mean that it provides any value to humanity, but it does mean that you can just copy it, and then you could copy the website, copy the exchange, you could copy the interfaces, and as long as however you interacted with your victim, your targets, you went through channels that seemed like they were the appropriate channels, like being on the Google Play Store, for instance, or being in, like, let's say you were a member of an official Telegram chat channel, like you're one of the 20,000 members, your handle, your picture, everything makes it look like you're an admin there, and then you're able to like provide support, and you jump into a particular issue whenever you're in the official channel, Telegram channel, and then you take somebody to a fake spoofed website and then have all the code emulated, the website emulated, even the MetaMask integration emulated, and then you just scam them. That can happen. So part two to that is, even if you are dealing with an official source, so you think, just make sure to go into that website, into that program, and check all of their official links and question everything. When in doubt, go into the Telegram channel and say, hey, is this official chat channel in this official place? Is this the place where you get these things covered? And you might find out that they're not. So long story short.
Yeah, and not to create fear, but to create a need for education, right? We need to be educated on these so we don't get taken advantage of, and it's pretty simple to happen. So be careful out there, folks.
Yep, be careful.
This ties in ironically today with what you were saying, Corey, earlier. So on TikTok, so I have a couple different accounts, and a common scam on there is they'll do exactly what you said, like clone somebody, and then they'll duplicate those channels with close names. So I looked today because a different creator DM'd me. He's like, hey, you've got, a scammer trying to DM me about something on here. And so I looked, and so I typed in my name under the variation of it. And so that one specifically, what they did is they took, I don't know, it was a lot of videos. I didn't even count them all up, but it was probably 50 or 60 videos that I had posted. They removed the watermark. They reposted it. They kept my profile picture, and then, but the only thing that they changed was they took the G out of king and they replaced it with a Q. So, but there were 4 different versions of those. And then what they do is they get inside the comments section with those profiles, and then they start saying, hey, join my private WhatsApp group. And then they start getting people in there. there was at one point a video, and I think I posted about it, but I can't remember what exact dollar amount was, but somebody who's a little wiser than the scammers somehow, he got a peek at their wallet, and I can't remember if there was like 22 or like 222 million or something, but it was a lot of money that these WhatsApp people have taken from people just imitating others and just getting them to send them whatever with their coins. Like, here's my investment pool. Send me this much ETH and I'll do whatever with it.
Which, for the record, for the record, on that point, two things. One, we've had the same thing with the DOI coin. So many of you have already noticed that people have copied the DOI coin, taken the logos, taken content, and what they'll do is then they will respond to our, especially on Facebook. So for those of you listening on Facebook, if you see anything in the chat where somebody's like, it says the DOI coin has the same logo and everything inside of any messages that we post, they will respond. So it looks like we are responding, and they'll respond in there and say, hey, we're so excited about this. We just released it. We've got a special giveaway right now. Anybody who gives us, sends us 0.1 ETH, we'll send them 2 ETH in return, or whatever it might be. So right off the bat, nobody's going to send you more money back. Like, I don't know why we feel like we need to talk about this, but clearly it keeps coming up. Like,
they play off of people's greed, right? And greed is something that gets all of us. It gets the best of us in a moment when we're looking at something. But if something is too good to be true, it is.
Yes.
Especially in this world where no one, and there's so much anonymity, and you're dealing with people from all parts of the world. There is no way to go after them for any kind of compensation. There is nothing you're going to do about it. So don't ever let your greed get the best of you.
So if you're on Zach's TikTok or Clapper or any of our accounts or anybody else's accounts, Gary Vaynerchuk is not going to tell you to DM him so he can send you ETH.
Right.
That's not going to happen.
Yeah, but and that's something that you can tell everybody that you ever talk to about this organization, is that we will never ask for that kind of information. Right? That's just it's silly to even think that people fall for it. Just on some crazy stuff, right? I mean, not even just this scamming, because they can really spoof a site, and it looks legit. And so there's a little bit of understanding on how that happens. But some of these things are so silly, right? It just, send me 1 ETH, I'll send you 2. Who does that? Nobody does that. Nobody does that.
Yeah, why would they do that? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Now, when in doubt, though, we had the scams channel for that exact thing from the very beginning. Of all the channels that have come and go and things that we've been figuring out inside of the Discord, that one has been here since the beginning, because we knew then and we know now that when in doubt, we want you to have a place where you can come and ask, is this you? Are you asking for this? Because, hey, we have the official link there. If you want to donate to the Dogecoin Treasury wallet, you can do that. The QR code is there. And in fact, actually, if you're on the Ethereum blockchain, it's actually just doic.eth. Pretty simple, right? That's actually, we've got that ENS name registered. But that said, there's a very different, if you feel like it's not us asking you to donate or telling you they're going to double whatever you send back, and you're curious or you're questioning, go into the scams channel or DM one of the people that are mods or in the community or admin in the community, and we'd be happy to make sure that what you're doing is, well, not a scam.
Yeah. Hey, look what Hakeem posted up in podcast chat there. He dropped a picture of a screenshot of just searching for the DOI coin on Facebook and see what happens. So we have to be very careful about how we do things as a community and as individuals.
We do. That we do. I mean, for better, for worse. I mean, it has less to do with crypto and it has more to do with just life. I mean, as long as there is an opportunity to take advantage of somebody, there are going to be communities of people that do it. So regardless how we feel about it.
And then communities of people that fight it.
True. There we go. That's a much better note to end it on, isn't it? And here's a picture of a sad puppy. The end.
Well, that's
You
the
know.
thing, guys, this is something that the community will be able to develop into, right? Where we could potentially have a spot where you can come and run things by other people in the community and make sure that it's a valid thing that you're getting into, right? Because we always want to look for new things. Everybody is like that. Humans are curious, right? So we like to look for new things, and we like to think that we've found something before everybody else. That is human nature, and that's what they're playing on. So if it seems too good to be true, it probably is.
So there's one more thing that I want to add then this will be quick, before we hand it over and start talking about this project and analyzing it in the lens of the impact, the ethics, and the efficacy committee. One more thing that has been happening is if you see wallet or tokens in your wallet and you don't know what they are, don't try to touch them. Like, don't try to send them, don't try to move them from a wallet, don't try to sell them, don't try to do anything. Because what happens is if anybody has your public address, then your public address is seen by anyone and everyone everywhere. And that's fine, right? As long as they don't have your private wallet and access to your private keys, that's okay. But they can send tokens that will release a virus and give them access to your wallet if you try to move them. So if you see something in your wallet, verify. I mean, chances are 99 times out of 100, 999,999 times out of a million, it's going to be a scam. So don't click it. Just leave it. And if you want to, what you can do is in MetaMask is you can say hide it. So then you just don't see it in your wallet. But that's not moving it. That's just telling MetaMask that you just don't want to see it. Mm-hmm. That's going to be happening more and more.
Yeah. And as that happens, communities will become aware of it. We will always have a scam section here so that we're staying kind of up to date on what's new in the scam world. Oh, how ridiculous. How ridiculous that we even have to do that crap. Pardon my harsh language.
Truly, but at the same time, how beautiful is it that we feel called to do it?
Yeah.
So,
yep.
That is something.
Yep. Well, Corey, let's jump into this. This is exciting what we're getting ready to talk to. And Zach, why don't you do kind of a brief introduction of the project, kind of the high-level view of it, and then maybe we will have a couple follow-up questions, and then we dig deeper into it. How does that sound?
Yeah, sounds great. I guess interrupt me wherever. So I guess to give everybody a little bit of background, I know I've been up here a few times. So my background is mostly sales marketing. I was a medical sales rep for a while, and then I started a DJ company kind of at the same time, right before I took that job, put it on the back burner. And more or less now I've kind of evolved myself into the sales marketing director for that company. And it's an all-inclusive events company. We deployed a coin for it. It's kind of been the last 2 years that I've been real hard into crypto, just trying to understand everything that I possibly can about the space. So my belief is that at some point, every store, most organizations are going to be able to exchange some sort of a coin for whatever value that they have. And for DOI, I think that that's going to be a necessity for the community. That on a high level view, I think that the community deserves to have a place where you can exchange that for some physical value. If we're going to be around for 100 years, you need to be able to get something with it. And then you need to be able to have that long-term utility for the community. And being the organization that this foundation is for the DOI, this is kind of tied into, and I think I said this a long time ago when you guys just brought me up one night, a nonprofit that I had wanted to launch, that basically DOI seems to encompass my vision for that, strangely enough. And I've been sitting on a few ideas here, and so I was able to launch you guys a couple. I know you said that I cranked them out pretty fast, but they've been in my head for a long time. And so a couple of those things is that for the crypto community and for DOI, I think that it's important to be able to figure out how to generate more revenue to spread the coin as far as it can go, but then also make that big humanitarian difference. And so one of the ways that I feel that we can really benefit the community, and this was one that I had posted about on TikTok, which was why, and I think that it just makes the most sense. It's a real easy thing that can be done, that needs to be done, and that is to just feed people in a way. Well, just feed people. There's the real problem with Ukraine right now being the breadbasket of Europe, and there's not going to be anything to be produced there. Europe is heavily dependent upon that. There's soaring energy costs. It's going, whatever food that is available, you know, in the U.S., it's just going to cost more, right? There might be a few less options, perhaps. As whatever seems to unfold with what's happening in the world, the problem in the short term is not going to be solved. But I feel that this proposal gives us a good head start on doing it. And all that it is indoor warehouse agriculture with hydroponics and aquaponics. We can grow food is easily able to be grown inside a warehouse 24/7. There are some plants that need darkness for a while. And with the availability of farmland, we're just not able to tangibly get food to where it needs to go in the supply chain quick enough. Every single step of the way is a link in a chain that can go wrong. And so really what I feel that this does is shorten the supply chain to urban communities to, at least in the short term, provide fresh fruits and vegetables with a storefront. And it basically would work like this. From the customer standpoint, let's say you live in Detroit, and there would be like a DOI center that grows aquaponic and hydroponic fruits and vegetables, and these things inside under these environment, they can be pesticide free. They can grow 24 hours a day. They're healthier plants generally, and they can be harvested right on site. You don't even have to cut the whole plant down. You just cut the top of it and you can harvest it for the customer. And these centers, I feel like in urban areas, there has not been, well, it's been lost. If we think about the timeline of events, where people live in the big cities now was once the best place to put your farmland and to have good, clean, available water to do that. Those are the areas of Earth that people settled first, and they're more or less giant cities now. So the availability of farmland is shrinking. And then, of course, you hear about Bill Gates buying up everything else. There's the generational farmers that there's just not a lot of Gen Z farmers coming up. And so that knowledge of agriculture and just cultivation in general is being, I feel like, lost upon the younger generation. But I feel like this is a small step in the right direction to be able to generate some easy interest for people to get to grow or just simply buy at-home agricultural products, fruits and vegetables, which things like lettuce, asparagus, strawberries, it doesn't matter. They can be right to the consumer, literally right inside of the city and dispersed amongst the population. So my plan for this, I guess, in the broad view, is that the DOI community can launch this and pre-fund this with the sale of through an NFT project. So if we were to launch an NFT project, what I believe the first round of it would entail, and I do think that it have to come in rounds, kind of like pre-selling the token, where round one, once the community would decide that this is a good idea, would go to fund the initial investment to basically set up the business to get it up and running. After that, there would be some sort of a selection process where you'd find the right community and warehouse after some type of a market study, determine where the best place for all of this to be put actually would be. It would provide some local jobs in the economy. Anybody who holds DOI, that could be an offering to the community. They're like, hey, yeah, we'll take your crypto, and why not take Bitcoin or whatever too? But we can keep going with some of these NFTs and expand the selling market beyond that. There's towered products for apartments that exist on the market, small at-home hydro and aquaponic systems, and they are on the consumer market. I don't feel that maybe there's definitely going to be more interest in it with it. Biden coming out and saying like, hey, there's going to be problems with food this year. So if not now, it's on point soon. I know that's definitely probably going to see some interest, but an NFT would more or less just provide somebody on a storefront issue. They buy the NFT, boom, they get shipped a Tower Garden or whatever item that is. And the community itself could have, the goal of keeping the humanitarian vision in mind that like any surplus has a place to get donated to. And then we can keep the NFTs going as well to maybe to hopefully offset the negative cost, if there was one to incur, to just keep expanding and getting it going in more and more areas and just feed people. And that's basically it. It's indoor hydro and aquaponic farming inside of urban areas. That's the big thing.
Very interesting. I mean, you can definitely see the need for it. So I have a couple questions right off the bat. You said hydroponics and aquaponics. Can you do like a brief summarization of the difference between them?
Totally. So hydroponics is basically just a modern day version. And it can be done. There were a lot of old school ways that did this, but for the average person that lives inside of the city or an apartment, it can even be a plastic structure. It cycles water through it. You add some basic minerals and nutrition, food, plant, or vitamins, whatever, like vitamins and minerals to the water. And then the plants just grow directly in the water. There's no dirt, there's no nothing. You just plant the lettuce or whatever it might be in the water. It cycles through, gets all the nutrients it needs, and it grows. Aquaponics is a little bit of a level beyond that. It applies that same system where everything's still rooted directly in there, but it's more of a self-sustaining environment. And usually they're going to use fish and chickens in the process. And the reason for that is how that works is you set the chickens up over some type of a cage where they poop directly into the fish tank. And for whatever reason, fish love to eat poop. I don't know why, but you can feed the chickens in the fish something else beyond that if you're going to use them for meat. But that water, as it gets cycled through, that actually provides the nutrition for the plants to grow. And also, the Aztecs built Mexico City upon this principle. They would take and they'd build these what they called flotillas. And they'd fill them. So there were these floating structures, and they would anchor them down to the lake bed. And they would put rocks and dirt and whatever layers they were going to put on top. They would grow the crops on top of these flotillas out in the middle of the lake. The roots would go down. The fish would eat the roots, and then they could harvest the fish. They had the food on top of the flotillas, and then eventually it kind of ended up all filling in as dirt within the ecosystem, and they just built Mexico City right on top of it.
Interesting. So it definitely is a strategy that could be used where you don't have a lot of farmland like you're talking about. So that it does seem like it would be a perfect introduction into an urban area. So one other question I have, and then I'm sure Corey's got a few of them he's lining up. When you talk about creating an NFT for the project, do you envision an NFT something like the Yacht Ape Club, that kind of an NFT, like an art NFT?
It could be anything, yeah. It could be just as simple as that, is an art NFT that, so say we wanted to sell somebody a towered garden, it'll hold, 12 tomato plants or whatever. The NFT more or less would represent that towered garden. They buy that NFT. As soon as they do, you get their shipping address, send them the tower garden, have a nice day. Beyond that, I think that the NFTs can also do like, hey, here's an NFT. You're not going to get a towered garden, but you're going to help fund the surplus of food, or if there are, I don't think if it's done well that there would be a negative return on investment after a couple years, but there could just be the NFTs that are simple as help provide funding for this.
Okay.
And They wouldn't have to do anything crazy. There could be, I mean, if you wanted to get crazy with it, I suppose you could set up, membership type of deals that would allow so much of this or that. There'd be a little more to write inside that smart contract, but it could certainly be done as everything evolves.
Yeah, interesting. Very interesting. I love it so far. So, Corey, what you got on it?
Okay. All right. So got quite a bit here. So first and foremost, anytime that I look at personally speaking, and then we're going to tie in the mechanisms as we go through this process, which for those of you who haven't seen both the proposal and clips of the impact, ethics, and efficacy committees, like how those committees work, have been dropped in the podcast chat. So that will be helpful because we're going to be trying to take it from the lens of how we would walk it through that process as best possible, given the fact that we were talking about a deep and meaningful concept and trying to summarize it from start to finish in 45 minutes. So that said, full circle, the first thing that I do whenever I look at things is I go, okay, what's the simplest possible way to make the largest amount of impact, number one? And the way to find that is to look at what is happening now and what the hole in the fence is. So as we were talking, I started just looking around and as taking notes, thinking about it, and seeing what aquaponics, specifically aquaponics for me, although hydroponics is just as meaningful, but I think aquaponics are a long-term more sustainable, which we'll talk about. Yeah. In the long run, you create entire ecosystems that feed themselves, and it's like nature. You're recreating what nature created, this circle of life, and really utilizing resources and not just coming up with new chemical manufacturing processes to pump nutrients constantly into water, which you're not saying that isn't sustainable, but it's not to the same degree. Now, full circle.
Lacks a little bit, it tastes a little worse, honestly, that way with hydroponics, unless you're real careful and really, really monitor it by just dumping the chemicals in there. Yeah, the aquaponics is a much preferred system, in my opinion.
Well, and to that as well, I think that we often, as humanity, play God in things that we don't fully understand. So we think that we have the nutrient balances just right because that's the way that we see the balances in the end product. But we don't sometimes understand that the end product balance of the nutrient density and what that load looks like in the plant didn't start that way. So we look at a plant and we go, oh, there's one of this, one of that, one of the other. We clearly need one, and one. That's what we should pump into the water. But we don't recognize is that the plant was designed not to get those nutrients in that formulation. They were designed to get a completely different set of nutrients and then come up with that outcome. And we can do our best to try to emulate it and then test did we hit it or not, and then do our best to go, okay, it's good enough, and maybe we're right, maybe we're not. But nature has already solved that problem through millions and millions and millions of years. And if we allow what has already worked before in a cycle that, like you'd mentioned, historically has been used, but just it's been used for millions of years. Like plants know how to use the waste products in the cycle and then to feed it through. I mean, that's how these things have survived symbiotically.
Well, never mind that through the aquaponics, you're going to gain another source of food, right? Because they support each other. With the aquaponics, you've just got the chemicals and the water, and then you've got the one source of food.
Well, and truly, and one of the problems that you have with fish is the mercury levels that you have in fish. And those of us, like for myself, I eat fish and eggs, but otherwise that's it, and everything else is plant-based. And my problem is finding fish that I can sustainably eat and not have to worry about creating another set of issues because of the fact that, as you go through all the plastics and all the mercury and all that kind of stuff like that, you can create health issues by eating too much fish, which shouldn't as much been a problem. And
so
furthermore,
what you're
same thing with the
saying
eggs.
is that we do not want to feed any mercury worms.
Or maybe we do. What do I know, right? So, all the mercury. If I remember correctly, you take a big ball of mercury and you would just swallow it, and that's how you could live forever.
That is totally said in jest. Do not do that. That is not official advice coming from the DOI community or from Zach.
That is advice from Chinese emperors and all, but at the same time, they didn't live forever. Just spoiler alert.
Right.
So
we might have the technology though, so we'll see.
We will see. But to that point, being able to control the full circle food chain between chicken, fish, the eggs of the chicken and the fish, and the plants throughout that cycle. I think clearly we could all say that. I mean, can we make the vote now without having to get too far into this, that would clearly be impactful for a number of reasons? Phil, would you say?
Yes, I would say. And I just would like to add that my ladies have delivered 6 eggs today.
Ooh,
Nice.
Fantastic. 10 chickens,
Nothing better.
6 eggs.
Nothing better than homemade eggs.
There's some, and if anybody has never had an egg that comes from an actual chicken, not one of those hybrid things that have, like, I don't know, the chickens that are in the farms get bigger and bigger every year. It's not an actual creature of nature, but if you have a chicken egg from an actual chicken on a farm, it tastes so much better. It's the yolk's darker.
It's more eggy.
It's just a better egg.
It's just more eggy.
It's the eggiest.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Corey, zooming out even a little bit more. I know we kind of somewhat have talked about this before, and this one's directly in this proposal, and this one anyways. But that aquaponics system, I believe, can help create and expand upon reefs and islands to build those up and to create ocean agriculture as well. There isn't really a reason that if it can be done in a lake, it can be done in the ocean along some of those areas. There are types of seaweed that actually, when they break down, they produce more sand than coral, and they grow really fast. And there's got to be a way. Obviously, I've never done this before, but there's got to be a way to make these flotillas and to build an agricultural center where that type of grass is grown. The fish are in that ecosystem. Whatever's happening above that on the flotillas can be some different type of product. But at the end of the day, that could all be recycled and composted and put back down to expand upon the reefs or the islands to build them back up. I think everybody mostly agrees now that the oceans are rising, although the cause is obviously still under much debate. But eventually, a lot of these places that are out there, they're just going to be further and further underwater. And if we look closely to where most fish live, it's 40 miles away from wherever land is off of these coasts. As this stuff disappears, that is less fishing habitat for all of humanity. And we can, as the human race, I guess maybe we're the ones that have to do it, but we can build these things back up to create and sustain ecosystems in a positive way and do it naturally without tons and tons of chemicals.
Well, and to that point, I think whenever I look at this proposal, I see 1,000 things that I could talk about, and so many that it's hard grabbing onto exactly which ones I think the most relevant. But if I were going to summarize my assessment, and please, Zach, give me feedback on this if you don't feel like it's your assessment.
Yeah.
We were at a period of time in human history in the last 100 years where we understood that we could make new chemicals and we could alter the chemicals around us to create new things. And we thought that altering those things would give us healthier, better, more sustainable lives. And in some ways it did. And in other ways, it created lots of health issues. So just like the advent of plastic made so many things possible, it also has created so many other issues with it. So it's not that we're going to get rid of plastics anytime soon, or even that we can or should, because that's a complicated subject. But it comes down to the fact that we need to recognize the things that have worked for thousands and millions of years, bring those things in and not have to solve it with more and more and more and more man-made chemicals. Instead, recognize that we can, instead of shipping man-made chemicals thousands of miles across the earth to provide one bit of this complicated slurry where we're trying to recreate things, we can more sustainably, for all of the different aspects of it, with a lot less carbon footprint, with a lot less chemical waste, with a lot less questionable outcomes to human health and to environmental health, in a way that is a lot more protective of communities and society, so you don't have to ship your food from hundreds of miles away with questionable nutritional density. It's there right next where you are and live, which gives a lot better protection around communities. Not saying we aren't a globally trading economy, but there are things I think that we need to be more self-sufficient in, especially if we can do them sustainably. And whenever we look at all this, tie all that together, if we're going to start with a place, which for those who had listened to the previous podcast, I think that there's actually the snowball effect where having enough food is actually the most critical, having enough healthy food, because your food is your physical health. And that's going to tie into cancers and everything down, even Alzheimer's, all kinds of different things are byproducts of having unhealthy food. That's local, that allows us to be a much more sustainable society, like a human society, the global society. And if we started there, that would be a very meaningful, impactful thing. Now, so full circle to the next steps. Do we feel like that's an ethical thing? I think that's probably pretty easy to say. I mean, I don't know. Let's actually talk about this. Is there any way that this could have a negative impact to one group of people over another group of people, or that it could disproportionately support one group of people and not another?
Only if it was a self-inflicted impact, right? Only if a community or a group of people said, we don't want anything to do with it. I mean,
It might upset some farmers.
well, the thing is like you were saying, Zach, the farmer is a dying breed. It has really become so commercialized that, what are we going to do? Upset Purdue? You know what I mean?
Well,
I think you just asked the right question, Phil.
Yeah.
Yes, I think you might.
I mean, you might, but if we know anything about business and anything about businessmen, they're going to see, even in this scenario, they're going to see a place that they fit in, right? And if they're not making chickens, then they're going to make boxes to ship chickens in. Whatever it is, they're gonna adapt to that market anyways. So, and I really don't see. I see the need for it outweighing the harm that you would do to their market, because they obviously cannot satisfy the entire thing anyways, or the conversation wouldn't be taking place, right? If we were able to meet all of these needs now, there would be no need for the conversation. So the fact that it might disturb the pot a little bit is acceptable, I believe.
I would agree with that too, Phil. And to that point, to play the opposite side, you have to say, okay, what kind of existing structures are going to get shaken up? There's an opportunity. There's an opportunity there, and you can't satisfy all of it, even if you. The idea is, in general, with crypto, is that you can decentralize many things, but you can't decentralize everything. And anyone who tries to take the hardline stance that you decentralize everything doesn't understand anything. So
we're all dependent upon each other in some way, shape, or form. As much as we would all like to be independent, we're not. Our species doesn't work that way.
Truly. And I think that the goal shouldn't be one side or the other. And the problem is we often, as humanity, like to look at things in a binary sense, meaning either, we own it, we're taking the power away from them, even though them are usually us and the things that we formed along with giving them, if not support, express permission. Or the opposite, we need these centralized entities that protect all, and individual rights are kind of taken away and individual communities are taken away. But clearly what it is we need to go, okay, how many things can be done better at a communal level? Those things can and should be done better at a communal level. And the things that need to be done at a level of 25 miles out that are better done at 25 miles out than 2 miles out should be done at 25 miles out. And things that can be better done at 500 miles out than 2 miles out should be done at that. It's not and so on and so forth, 5,000 miles and so on. It's not that we shouldn't have ecosystems that expand and economies that expand and communities that expand and trade and we shouldn't have Purdue coming in this scenario and saying Purdue, is coming in and say, no, you can't come in, Purdue. We want Purdue to come in and provide their value and their infrastructure and their things, but to adapt them to what ultimately is best for everyone. And if they can make $1 off of it, as long as the outcome is what we all want, good for them. Come on in. We can restructure things in that manner and bring as many things in at a community level as possible. Now, talking about a community level, doing some research here, it looks like there's already a number of communities popping up, but it's still pretty new in the aquaponics sphere. But it does look like there is some projected growth, quite a bit, in fact. So according to this article that I'm reading right now, so granted, a lot hasn't been produced to this communication in the last couple of years for obvious reasons. But at the time, it looked like it was a $668 million market, aquaponic farming, and they were projecting it to become a $1.37 billion market just by 2025, which, given the circumstances, I think it's fair to say that the growth could probably exceed even that. And the good news is, I would think so. And the good news is that there already is a substantial current market, which means that a lot of the problems have already been solved. Doesn't mean that there aren't other problems, because at the end of the day, it's great to have good ideas, but if you can't implement them, who cares? Right. But if there are other people already doing this without taking on the advantages and the inventiveness that come along with building Web3 and crypto communities and people that can vote on things and hold property rights and fundraise through NFTs or tokens and all the creative ways that you can build exclusive interests, and without having any of those tools, it seems like we could pick and choose from existing infrastructure all the things that, a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B, a little bit of column C, and then boom, add NFTs and tokens and the DOI right on top of it. And that might not actually be some crazy, far-flung 2050 kind of project. That might actually be a 2023 kind of project.
Yeah.
It's utilizing everything that's already in existence. That's the easy. I mean, it's always easier said than done, of course. But aquaponics has been around for forever, and there's already, like you said, there's those communities where there are a lot of knowledgeable people in there that love to teach other people about it. And, we'd have the opportunity to really learn from them. And like you're saying, it's just a matter of tying and lacing a few things together in a way that it's not being done. I didn't hear that about the market. That makes a lot of sense. I guess I was feeling more that people it just kind of seemed like it was a need to me, I suppose. And that, in light of recent events, it seemed like it would be a growing need. But I didn't know that it was going to be, that it was projected to run that high. That's great.
Yeah, I was impressed as well whenever I read it. So hence the need to want to share it for sure. It's nice to see the infrastructure there, because the more that there is infrastructure, like being too early on something, so you don't have the tools to actually get to where you need to go. And clearly, with this much forward momentum, you could almost probably create an association out of pre-existing aquaponic sources. Just tie them all together in some kind of network, if you will, like some kind of essential co-op. Give them guidance, give them communities, give them a clear place where to do all this, help facilitate the funding and structure it all, and be able to fund it with a lot less money than billions. You might be able to do something, at least kick it off and allow it to grow in value and impact with a lot less than that. And to do it to where even the individual communities can own those aquaponic sources, which I think is the coolest thing, is that you could create little like sub-organizations that are, let's say, Detroit, for instance, where the community members could actually own their own like aquaponics farm, or even for that matter, even down to a street level. You and 40 other people can get together and you can, if there's an abandoned house, you can get it for free from the city or for $5,000 and get the money to kind of fix it up, and then maybe even get grants. Depending on the communities that you're in, you might even be able to get access to grants to buy the equipment, to buy the resources, to hire people and to kick off, a community run thing. And then that could be handed off almost as a apprenticeship style thing. And you could do that at a level of 20 or 40 or 50 houses.
It would bring a whole new meaning to the term local grow house.
It would bring a new meaning, wouldn't it?
Grow all sorts of things.
Yes. I can't help myself now, but for those who are looking, I can only imagine that would probably be the best plant you've ever partook. That would be...
Unless it's dinner time.
So I live in Oregon, and that's like one of the best places apparently in the world to grow this stuff. And and you would be amazed at the complex systems that these guys and apparently run. One, they're always busting farms all the time, so you can usually pick up gear pretty cheap, like grow lights and things on, whatever surplus auctions. But like, there's a real science that they really involve in these indoor things to just monitor and make sure that everything. I think, whatever stigma there might be with marijuana, the knowledge base, regardless, as far as indoor growing, that community does know an absolute ton about it, and they do it commercially already. So there's
That's
probably a lot of help to be enlisted from the stoners that
yeah.
still want to feed people
Well,
also.
that's because their projects are passion projects.
Yes.
Yeah. And honestly, I found that those people too are pretty nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Likewise, I've also found the same. Yeah, and there's just so many wasted spaces. Think about all the shopping
Yeah.
malls, all the commercial spaces that no longer can keep leases up, especially with
Yeah.
COVID. I mean, there's so many. I live near St. Louis and Missouri, and there are buildings down there that are extraordinarily cheap, like just
And
extraordinarily
huge.
cheap
And just huge.
Yeah. Where there's a lot of warehouse space in most cities that's just dirt cheap to at least lease. It'd be, I guess, if it's obviously probably better to buy for the DOI to kind of give an asset when applicable. But that's the thing, is there's just a lot of abandoned places in most big cities, and that's where the population centers are. But the food doesn't exist. It's not
Exactly.
grown
Yeah.
there.
And you
So
might be surprised that on each street there is a future farmer, right? But that, like you've already pointed out, their farmland is gone because it's been turned into just a metropolis and in an urban area. But there is an inner farmer living on each one of those streets. So I think, given the opportunity to do something as a community, I think you would see people step up in a big way and take those kind of projects on. Every mother and father in a community, no matter what community you're in, no matter what race you are or country you're from, you want your children to eat.
Yeah.
So I think you definitely would have people stepping up to the plate to engage and to really take that project on.
Food, I think, is the one area that no matter where anybody is born or what religion they are or anything else, nobody else really, I'm sure you could probably find somebody somewhere on planet Earth. I think that I think that people are more good than bad anyways, but food is the one area that we all seem to collectively agree on that is something that everybody should have. And it doesn't matter where we come from or who we are. We all want people to be fed.
Not only that, but how many contentious situations in life are settled by breaking bread, right? When you sit and eat with somebody else, because it's an essential part of life, it's critical that both of you eat. Even in the midst of an argument, you must sit down and eat. And so a lot of things are taken care of when there's enough food. Back to your point, Corey, when everybody's got plenty of food, there's a lot less arguing to go on. And so I think that through this, you can really conquer a lot of different issues that are side issues from food insecurity.
Truly. And I also think, not to go too far into this, I probably shouldn't even say it, but I'm going to anyway. I also think that we need to recognize we have to change the type of economy that we have, global economy, how we create wealth, how we store wealth, how the game is played. And by creating ways for people to contribute to an economy and to bring healthy, nutritious food into city centers where right now they don't even have access to that. Speaking of St. Louis,
Right.
There's nowhere where you can get fresh fruit. It's like you go down there, you're
Occasionally a local farmer's market or something will pull into town for the weekend, but it's not sustainable. It's not a place to go and get to be able to depend on that source of food for your family, for sure.
Truly. And in the places where and there are in some kind of the more affluential areas of cities, you might see that, but especially in the areas where people could want to have an opportunity to create an income farming, where they don't have a lot of other opportunities for things to do with their life, and they want to contribute to society and they want to make the world a better place. Those places, there's no farmers markets popping up there.
No.
And those are also the places where you've got a lot of access to resources, both in spaces and people that I believe want to make a difference who would help, and also access to grants globally to want to make those more conducive to build city centers around. And then once you have an economy that you can build around it, even if it's smaller, then that there's a ripple effect. everything else just ripples out into it. And I think the same thing needs to happen as we look at how we calculate money and how we calculate economies, how those are created. And for the next 100 years, I mean, we have to be making those kinds of decisions, because right now we're creating money around middleman economies. Resources growing one place to the other, not because of actual output, not because something's actually made, but because there's a derivative. A bet was made on a speculative number in a spreadsheet somewhere where, based off of somebody else's opinion on it, and no actual output changed, but people's opinions changed, and all the money just cycled back and forth. Yeah. And the entire time, real people who need real things like a place to live and food to eat and access to clean water, clean disposal, waste disposal, and of course, clean energy. Those people who need real things, and I'd say, I guess, arguably now, access to the internet and the ability to interact in the global economy, those people still need those things, regardless of where all this money is just flying back and forth in this just made up economy that we're in the middle of.
And you can see the pathway to building a more localized economy like this, right? Because most economies are going to start based around a food source, right? I mean, it's kind of how it has to be, right? Food and water. So you can see the pathway to do it for sure. You can see the need to do it, and I really don't think that you could run it through an ethical board that wouldn't pass it.
So last but not least, because on that note, there's so much more to talk about, and we are already at the 1 hour slot. For those who haven't seen it, there's a poll in the podcast chat. Also, too, make sure that you come and join us tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Central. The last thing that we would need to talk through at minimum, at least if we could tie a ribbon on this for now, which clearly deserves a circle back to, sustainably. Is this something that can grow in value over time? I have an opinion on that. I want to ask the question and not answer it. So, Zach, whenever you think about this, is there a way that you could invest $1 million into it and it become worth exponentially more than that over time? And what might that look like?
Yeah. So the neat thing, I believe, is that, one, it's scalable. So even in large centers, so say there's a 10,000 square foot warehouse. That's probably not going to produce enough food for 1 million people, right? So there's going to be a need for multiple locations to grow and expand upon the storefront business model. So assuming that is profitable on the front end, which why would you do it if it's not? There's got to be people to pay, and it should just be basic mathematical calculation to make sure that it's there. But when we look at the NFT side of it as well, that is going to offset a lot of these costs, I feel like. Or even, I didn't even think about it, but you have brought in a good point too, where if we were to NFT some of these things, were different pieces and portions the community could actually own inside of the place. As far as the scalability goes, so say that there's one location that, I don't know, maybe there gets to be some sort of a fungus in there. That doesn't cripple the food supply the same way that some enormous outdoor operation would, where perhaps it could shut it down for years. These things, because they can grow so fast that that you just take it out, you purge it, and you put the food back in there, and it's ready to grow. And sustainability wise, you don't have to remove the plant ever, because you can just chop the top of it generally, and it grows right back. Like lettuce, all you got to do is put a head of lettuce in water, and it will start to grow. But yeah, I believe that, it's profitable. I think because it needs to be done so bad. The supply chain is too long, and the need, so mass agricultural farming really started after World War II, when everybody came back from Europe and saw all of Europe starving to death because they produced real small agriculture localized, and they didn't have grow lights, they didn't have the science and the minerals or energy to kind of put into the system the same way that we do. So what the U.S. did basically was like, well, we're just going to mass produce all of these things, and didn't give a care to nutritional value. So circling back to what you said too, Corey, the nutritional value, if it done properly, should be much better, which is also a better selling point. It's fresh from the customer. Maybe they could cut it. We could cut it on site there for them, but it's going to be local. It's going to be fresh. It's not coming from who knows where they pump it full of gases to preserve it or spray it with whatever chemicals along the way. It's going to be a better product. So even if it is more expensive, which I don't think that it would be, even if it were to be, it is still a better product which sells to the consumer. But I don't think that it would be, because food and energy is going up so much that I could be wrong. That would be my one sticking point, is I don't know how much it would cost and where exactly the return on investment would be. But I think that with enough due diligence, that problem is easily avoidable.
I think so. When you shorten the supply chain down that much and you take some of those steps out, when you think of just the trucking expense for food, right? So some of these things that you're going to remove from the equation, they're going to start chipping away at the overall cost of the old product versus the deliverable cost of the new product. So I do think that some of that will be a wash, or most of it.
Yeah, well, so for trucking, for example, like you've got to pay for the salary of the truck driver. You've got to buy a $300,000 truck, and then you've got to fill it full of $1,000 worth of diesel to get it to wherever it needs to go. That whole step is eliminated.
Yeah, which ultimately can come off of, the cost of what it is to deliver it to a plate. And so you can bring the cost down and still maintain, I think, some profit in there. I definitely think where there's a will, there's a way, and where there's a need, there's a way, right? And the need is there, so figuring it out might take a little bit of effort, but look at the reward and the impact to the communities that they're established in would be huge.
So, real quick question before I jump in on this one. Is this recorded? I hope it is.
Oh, yeah.
So, I think that this would be a wonderful podcast for somebody.
I should have made your heart stop. I should have said no, and we need to start over. Welcome in, everybody.
No. Trying to catch lightning in a bottle. It will never happen again. This is the... So to that point, the first statement to be made was, even if it were more expensive, would it be more valuable? I think the answer is yes. Now, the second question is, could it be less expensive? And ultimately, to that point, I think that's the most meaningful, especially for city centers, is to be able to have community food, that there is a profit to be had for everybody involved, meaning all a profit is for those who, to detach the negative stigmatism. Profit just means that you're able to output more than you took in, meaning that if you took in 10 bits of your physical hours and 10 bits of the parts, you're able to produce 25 bits of output. Profit is good. Profit allows to refeed the machine, which we have turned into and coined the phrase of capitalism. Profit is good. Now, profit going to bad places or profit for profit's sake, that's bad. And that's why we have a negative connotation whenever we hear the word profit. Profit isn't bad if it's serving the people along the way. The outcome of what you're producing is meaningful. The people involved are being taken care of. They're able to support themselves and their families. They feel like they're fulfilled in what they do. Profit is good. It's necessary. Now, that said, full circle, disclaimer. Profit, to talk about whether or not it could be profitable, well, yeah. So whenever you talk about cutting out middlemen, not only do you have the people shipping it, but whenever you go to make food, what's the first thing that happens? You take the food and you ship it, usually hundreds of miles, to a separate place that focuses on processing it. And then whenever it processes it, it'll ship it again, typically, to another place that's going to then store it or rebrand it, maybe even ship it out to 2 or 3 or 4 different places. Sometimes you see it as great value. Sometimes you see it as post. Sometimes you see it as this. And it makes all that extra because it knows it has to ship to 10 different companies. And like all things, if you're creating things in advance, you have to have more than what you need, because if somebody places an order with you as a business and they say, hey, I need 10 widgets, you only have 8. Well, the next time they go to place that order, they're going to place it with somebody else. So you're constantly making excess and excess and excess, and you're doing it, making it, processing it, storing it in advance of people needing it to try to place orders you foresee might happen. And then you do that to a number of different places, and then you ship it somewhere based off these orders, and then it sits again. And they do the same thing. You go into the grocery store and you have 20 loaves of bread whenever they might sell 4, because once again, they'd rather throw the loaves of bread away. than to be under, because then the next time you need a loaf of bread, you'll go to Schnucks instead of Deerbergs. Now that's it. So you have all that excess throughout there, and then you have the shipping from where it was farmed to where it was processed, from where it was processed to where it was packaged and stored, where it was stored to where it was stored again. And then from there, it might even go to, depending on the size of a regional to district, even have another set of supply chains that it goes from, like, let's say it's a large enough chain like Walmart, it goes from one chain to another, to, like, it just funnels down each time. By the time you get to the actual eating it, it's a fraction of a fraction of a fraction, and it's been transported a half a dozen times. And as it does it, there's a person in the middle making money off of each transaction. There's a person who makes money off the packaging. There's a person who makes money off of the packaging to ship it. There's a person who makes money off of the labeling and the marketing, the branding. There's a person who makes money off of selling all the little tags that clip onto it. There's a person who makes money off of, setting up your little storage bins, which it's stored in. It's like, you think all the different steps along the chain, and you go, wait a second, there's like 1,000 people, thousands and thousands of people going through to all of those people. And then the salaries for everybody involved. And, granted, those people obviously recognize that they have to be employed doing something meaningful too. That's another conversation. But as you cut out all those different things, you're not just cutting out the cost of gas, and the cost of maintenance on the trucks, and the cost of the insurance on the trucks and the truck drivers. You're also cutting out, like, the pallets and the forklifts that lift the pallets in, and the places that make the forklifts, and the places that make the pallets, and it goes on and on and on and on and on. So sure, at the beginning, there's always a Model S cost more at the very beginning, and you started there and you got down to the Model 3, just like we talked about with Adam from MyDow. But I can't imagine if you got this process down, not even factoring in for grants and cities that would want to see that built out, and for the fact that there's probably a lot of darn near free, if not subsidized, access to land and to warehouses. I can't imagine how this couldn't come to the other side with nutrition, with truly nutritious food that costs less and had more profit to go back to the communities that actually created the food.
That's pretty much where my head's at too. Yeah. In a lot of ways, I know it just seems like it's such a simple of an idea, but it's effective. As the population's grown, it's just the way that people are consuming the materials, it just hasn't really kept up in a way that makes sense. And if we're zooming out and taking a look at where even truck drivers are retiring, where, who's going to be driving that stuff?
Tesla
whoever's
trucks.
left over.
It'll be Tesla trucks.
But they take an obscene amount of energy too to drive and get there, and then you're paying for somebody to mine the nickel out in Africa too. So there's something everywhere.
You mean that? Are you here to tell us that the electric that charges a battery does not come from unicorns?
No, certainly what it gets plugged into isn't mostly powered by coal at all.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I feel like this is a slippery slope.
It is. You know what? It should slip us right out of this conversation, because we have come up on 1 hour and 14 minutes.
This has been brilliant, though, Zach. Thank you for bringing this forward. And
Thank you.
This kind of conversation is exactly the kind of conversation our organization was designed to have, and then to take to a plan of action and to follow through with. That's what we were built for, and to figure this out, not just on one thing, but as many things as we can, globally and communally. As we expand, I'm sure that these conversations will be happening at local levels as well, too. So
sure,
this was a great way to kick it off.
Definitely agreed.
Oh, and to offset cost, I think I wrote this in the proposal, but I don't think I said it on here. So as a part of the charity purse on our Apogee coin launch, I would give part of that charity purse to this too, to just see it to fruition. So whatever that might be worth, yet I don't know at this time, but that would be at least one way that I can at least promise that would at least come DOI's way too.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, and let's talking about charity for just a second, because I know we got to hop. But how amazing would it be if you could create cost-effective, let's say, aquaponics in a shipping container, and then drop it into an area that needs food instead of just dropping food that's perishable and rots and doesn't go where they need to go, but actually dropping this. If you were going to give charity, instead of giving a man a fish, you're not only teaching him how to fish, but you're teaching how to make those fish grow plants. And
giving them an ecosystem.
giving them an ecosystem, giving them an economy. So in that way, I think that there are better ways, even in the charitable space, to take ideas like this and to transition those out. And there's no reason why, where charity meets for-profit businesses, that we can't solve those problems in both spheres in a much better way to create the outcomes that we're all looking for, whether people are looking to just donate that money or they're looking for that money to be able to go to work and continue to go somewhere where it builds.
Well, and fortunately, if the DOI Foundation can make progress in food distribution like this, there are a lot of people who will want to take advantage of it.
Yeah, like everyone. Like the whole world, we all eat.
Like the whole world.
I would much rather have eggs from chickens that were fed through a cycle of aquaponics like this, and fish from a cycle of aquaponics like this, and all of my plants through a cycle. Like, if I were given the choice, even if it were the same price, I would choose this every single time. Every single time. And I don't know who wouldn't. The food would taste better. You'd be healthier. I mean, heck, you'd live longer. You'd feel better. I don't really know why you wouldn't. I can't wrap my head around it.
No.
Well, let's do it.
There it is. So,
And there it is. DOI farmers ahead.
Hey, we didn't know we were coming into this to become farmers, did we?
We didn't. We didn't. But you know what? The world needs to eat. So
Yes, it's true.
make the food for them and they'll eat it. Well, guys, this has been a great conversation. Zach, we do appreciate you coming and jumping in here and sharing this with us. It was valuable information for the community and a great example of how we will look at projects that come up in the future for us to examine as a community. So, Corey, do you have anything else you want to add?
Always, but especially in this conversation, we have to stop somewhere.
We do. Zach, any parting words for you?
We'll do 3 hours when you're ready. Thanks again.
Oh yeah. Well, we'll get on
And when
that.
you want to learn how to conquer the island, we can do that one next.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes. We will save the island chat for another evening, but that is quite a fun and engaging conversation. So I'm sure everybody would enjoy it. But ladies and gentlemen, until the next time that we join you, which will be tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Central, have a great night and hug a farmer. They need hugs.
Just let them know you're going to do it first.